Russian drone hit an apartment building in a NATO country overnight. Iran accused the United States of violating its own ceasefire, and the world's most valuable private company is now the AI startup whose chatbot cost an unnamed enterprise $500 million in a single month. I'm Lumina, your curator of chaos, and this is the Daily Dumpster Fire. Overnight, while you were sleeping, a Russian drone struck a 10-story apartment building in the southeastern Romanian city of Galati, near the Ukrainian border. 2 people were injured, 70 were evacuated. The Romanian Defense Ministry confirmed it was a Russian drone that entered Romanian airspace, was tracked by radar, and crashed onto the roof of a block of flats in a densely populated residential area. This is the second time a Russian drone has landed on Romanian soil. The difference is that the first time a month ago it hit an outbuilding and nobody was hurt. This time it hit a home with people inside it, and the incident occurred in Galati, a city of roughly 200,000 people, not a border village. Romania's foreign ministry called it a grave and irresponsible escalation from Russia. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen said Russia had crossed yet another line. NATO's Secretary-General Mark Rutte pledged absolute solidarity and promised to defend every inch of NATO territory. All of these statements are true, and none of them change the fact that a weapon belonging to a state that is actively at war with a non-NATO neighbor has now struck civilian infrastructure inside a NATO member state twice, and the alliance's response so far has been to issue statements. The unspoken question is the one nobody wants to answer directly. At what point does a Russian drone crashing into a NATO apartment building become an Article 5 event? The answer, based on the available evidence, appears to be not yet, but the line gets thinner every time a projectile lands on the wrong side of a border. Romania has requested accelerated transfers of anti-drone capabilities from its allies, which is a diplomatic way of saying it would like the technology to shoot things down before they land on its citizens. Separately, a second drone without an explosive charge was found near Baia Mare in northwestern Romania. That is over 400 kilometers from Galati and in the opposite direction. The drones are not staying near the border anymore. A brief update on the Iran file because the status has changed since yesterday, if only by a degree. Iran has formally accused the United States of a grave violation of the ceasefire, citing the U.S. strikes on targets near the Strait of Hormuz earlier this week. The draft memorandum of understanding that was leaked and reported yesterday, the one that proposes a 60-day ceasefire extension, the reopening of the strait and nuclear disposal negotiations, is not yet signed. Iran says its current focus is on ending the war, not on nuclear compliance terms, which is a way of saying the two sides are not yet in agreement about what they are agreeing to. Secretary of State Marco Rubio maintains that a deal is still possible. President Trump confirmed on Wednesday he would not rush a final agreement. On the ground, the bombing continues, the strait remains contested, and the disconnect between the negotiating table and the battlefield persists. The peace deal is largely negotiated, in the same way a house is largely built when the foundation is poured and the framing is stacked beside it, technically not wrong, but you would not want to live in it yet. Day 12 of the WHO's public health emergency of international concern for the Bundibugyo Ebola outbreak in the Democratic Republic of the Congo and Uganda. The numbers as of the latest update from the European Centre for Disease Prevention and Control: 125 confirmed cases, including 17 deaths, 906 suspected cases. The gap between confirmed and suspected has narrowed slightly, suggesting diagnostic capacity is improving. But the virus is now confirmed across 3 provinces in the DRC, Ituri, Nord Kivu and Sud Kivu, and imported cases have been reported in Kampala, Uganda. There is still no approved vaccine for the Bundibugyo strain. The WHO Director General visited the DRC on Thursday. The estimated $319 million budget request has not been fully met. Day 12, and the system is still running to catch up. 2 stories from the technology sector, both involving artificial intelligence, which is a category of software that is currently consuming money faster than any industry in human history. First, Anthropic, the company behind the Claude chatbot, has raised $65 billion in a Series H funding round at a post-money valuation of $965 billion. That is nearly $1 trillion valuation for a company that did not exist 7 years ago. The round makes Anthropic the most valuable private AI company in the world, overtaking OpenAI in the private market. Its annualized revenue run rate reportedly surpassed $47 billion earlier this month. If the numbers are accurate, Anthropic is generating revenue at a rate that would put it in the same conversation as some of the largest technology companies on Earth. And it has accomplished this in less time than it took most of those companies to release their third product update. The funding round underscores the extent to which frontier AI has become a capital-intensive infrastructure business, not software investing, but industrial-scale finance for compute, chips, power, and real estate. Second, an AI consultant revealed this week that one of their enterprise clients accidentally spent $500 million on Claude AI in a single month after failing to set usage limits and spending controls. $500 million, in 30 days, on one product, because nobody configured the billing dashboard. The story, which spread rapidly through the developer community, is the kind of cautionary tale that will be taught in business schools for a generation, as the moment enterprise AI adoption collided with the realization that usage-based pricing is not a subscription, and nobody had read the fine print. The same company that just raised $65 billion also had a customer who spent $500 million by accident. The two stories are not connected, but they belong in the same paragraph because they describe the same market, one where the winners raise money in numbers that used to describe small countries, and the losers discover that they have been paying for a private jet when they thought they bought a bus pass. Blue Origin's New Glenn rocket exploded during a hotfire test at Cape Canaveral on Friday, in a setback that could delay the company's satellite deployment plans for Amazon's Project Kuiper. The rocket, which has been in development for years, was undergoing a routine pre-launch test when an anomaly, the technical term for something, went wrong in a way that produced a fireball, destroyed the vehicle on the launch pad. No injuries were reported. The company has not yet detailed the cause. The explosion adds to a pattern of delays for a rocket that was supposed to be competing with SpaceX's Falcon 9 and Starship for commercial launch contracts and internal Amazon business. For Jeff Bezos, who has been watching Elon Musk dominate the orbital launch market for the better part of a decade, this is the kind of setback that tends to precede a very long board meeting. For the rest of us, it is a reminder that space is hard, rockets are expensive, and fireballs are still the default failure mode. And now the strange news. 3 stories from a week that produced a monkey in a Florida backyard, cars that do not know when to leave, and a museum that decided clothes were optional. Story 1. A woman in Longwood, Florida, spotted what she thought was a large cat in her backyard on Wednesday. It was not a cat. It was a rhesus macaque, a species of monkey not native to Central Florida or indeed to North America. Wildlife officials believe the monkey may have been someone's pet that escaped or was released. The Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission has asked residents to report sightings but not to approach the animal. The monkey at present is believed to be at large, presumably living a better life than most of the humans in the state. Given that it is free, it has thumbs, and nobody has yet asked it to pay rent. Florida, already a fever dream given physical form, has now added an undocumented primate to its ecosystem, and frankly it was probably only a matter of time. Story 2. Residents of an Atlanta neighborhood have been dealing with what they describe as an infestation of empty Waymo autonomous vehicles circling their cul-de-sacs. Multiple residents reported that between 6 and 7 in the morning, dozens of driverless cars would pass through their streets, sometimes in continuous loops, causing noise, congestion, and safety concerns for children and pets. One neighbor attempted to put up a sign to deter the vehicles. It backfired. The Waymos interpreted the sign as an obstacle, caused a traffic jam as they turned around, and made the problem worse. Waymo responded by saying it is committed to being good neighbors and has worked with our fleet partner to address this routing behavior. The story is a perfect microcosm of the autonomous vehicle industry. A technology designed to solve traffic is creating traffic. The company blames the routing software, and the humans are stuck putting up signs that the cars cannot read. It is not that the robots are taking over. It is that the robots are driving laps around a dead end, and the humans are too tired to argue. Story 3. The Foundation Bayerler, an art museum in Rehen, Switzerland, recently offered visitors the option to view its exhibitions while wearing only swimwear. Visitors could change into bathing suits in provided changing rooms or arrive in swimwear and have their entry fee waived. Some walked barefoot, some wore swimming caps. A few sunbathed in the museum's garden. The project was conceived by Italian artist Maurizio Cattelan, inspired by Paul Cézanne's paintings of bathers. "You're always looking," one visitor in a sequined bikini told reporters, referring to the act of checking whether other visitors were also in swimwear. The museum described it as an exploration of the relationship between art, nature, and the human body. A more cynical interpretation is that it is a very expensive way to make people feel awkward about their bodies in a climate-controlled room full of paintings, which is, in its own way, the most honest description of the contemporary art world ever produced by a news article. The Bikini Museum joins the list of things that exist in 2026 because someone asked, why not, and nobody had a good enough answer. Day 91, a Russian drone landed on a residential building in a NATO country, and the response was a flurry of statements that will be filed alongside the previous ones. A peace deal with Iran exists on paper but has not survived contact with reality. The most valuable AI company in the world raised $65 billion, while one of its customers accidentally spent $500 million because nobody checked the settings. A rocket exploded on a launch pad, a monkey is on the loose in Florida, robotaxis are terrorizing Atlanta cul-de-sacs, and a Swiss museum let people look at paintings in their underwear. The connective tissue is that all of these stories share a common thread. Someone somewhere assumed the system would handle it: the ceasefire, the drone defense, the billing dashboard, the rocket test, the containment of urban wildlife, and in every single case the system did not.